What's up, buddies? Concert Buddy. Thanks for joining me today. The presentation you're about to put eyes and ears on is a terrific conversation I had recently with someone from a different part of the vinyl community. What I mean by that is someone who is not the typical age and demo of a lot of us in the community.
Who is it you think you see?
And that is a guy named Dylan over at the Record Spinner. Dylan's a younger guy, but man, he knows so much about music. Just the times I've interacted with him blows me away with just his recall and his subject matter expertise, not just in a particular genre, but just if you get talking on a topic, he's going to bam, bam, hit you with a bunch of the fast facts, which is always impressive, especially for a guy who admittedly, as we'll learn, has only really been collecting vinyl since about 2014 and only been doing the YouTube thing since about 2018. So we'll get into his background of learning about music, learning about the physical format of vinyl, etc., etc. I also want to talk with Dylan because he works in a record shop, which, if you're like me, sometimes you may daydream and wonder, man, wouldn't it be cool to work in a record shop, to own a record shop, all that stuff. So we kind of hear firsthand his experience of somebody who's super passionate about music, who actually gets to work in the store and sees a lot of the things that maybe you and I don't see through YouTube, through the message boards, through the readings that we may peruse from time to time. Anyway, it's a great conversation. I really appreciate Dylan for taking the time. Spoiler alert, you may be seeing and hearing more from Dylan on Vinyl Community Podcast. Cheap plug, bop, bop, bop. But anyway, I hope you enjoy this conversation. It was a lot of fun. Let's get into it. Hey buddies, it's Concert Buddy. I am joined by Dylan, the Record Spinner.
Hello.
If you've watched any of the content either on my YouTube channel recently or if you heard on the podcast, Dylan recently took part in a very thunderously fun panel. And so been looking forward to getting him back and kind of isolate and pick his brain, talk to him about all kinds of things, music and vinyl. So thanks for joining me, Dylan. Appreciate you having me.
Of course. Thank you very much.
Cool. So let's kind of get into, how I know you, and it's probably how a lot of the audience knows you, or if they don't, learning about you for the first time. Like a lot of us dopes, we're doing the vinyl community on YouTube thing, right?
That's true.
How long have you had a channel on YouTube, and did you just go right into it, or did you kind of figure things out and then decide, hey, I'm going to do this? Because I've noticed from afar, like, you're very organized. You've got obviously your own email. Yeah, exactly. You're very, I think, do you do a video a week? I mean, you're pretty
Yes.
consistent about your output and
Yes.
and all that kind of stuff. So tell me about your YouTube experience and where it started.
So, the Record Spinner started on New Year's Day in 2018. I am not a believer in New Year's resolutions, but the first of the year is always a good time to start something new.
Sure.
And for a while, like, I had been talking about maybe wanting to start a YouTube channel, which would prove to be an outlet for my passion for music and vinyl collecting, which I had been doing so since 2014. So sure enough, 2018 kicks in. I start making content, doing one video a week. And, it was a slow climb pretty much. For 2 years, I was just consistently putting out content, stuff that I would see other content creators doing, discussing certain subject matters while also talking about the music that I love. Sure. And, it just kept doing that. And then in 2020, when COVID hit, I hit 1,000 subs, got monetized, got sponsorships, and it's just been this uphill climb since then, to where now this year in 2023, I celebrated my 5th anniversary within the YouTube vinyl community. So it's been an ongoing rise since then, and it just continues to be, going on the up.
No, it's awesome. I think, didn't you just recently hit 6,000 subs? Did I say
something
that?
like that? Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. I hit 6,000. I want to say sometime like last month, and then I looked today just before I went on. I'm at like 6,130. So they say that once you hit 1,000, like, it just breezes on through. And then here, it took me 2 years to get to 1,000, and then 3 years later, here I am at 6,000. So it's crazy.
It's interesting you say that, because there's kind of this soft little hubbub right now in the community about the YouTube shorts and how people
Yes.
are doing them and they're getting subs, but then a lot of people, myself included to a degree, are pushing back and saying, but are they good subs? You know what I mean? Like growing organically and then
I
having
understand.
a built-in audience versus like just playing the numbers game. Where do you land on that one?
So it's funny. To be honest, YouTube Shorts is the same thing as TikTok.
Sure.
Basically. So whatever I share on my TikTok profile, which obviously it all ties in with the channel, I just upload it direct to YouTube as well. And it's funny you say that because one of my most viewed videos as of lately was something that I just cobbled together. It was like a little vinyl tech thing. Show this record. And I'm like, oh, wow, there's all these views. And sure, I got subs, but it's like, are you really watching? So it's like, the numbers look nice, but when you get down to the analytics, it's like, I don't know about this. So
yeah, well, it's funny you said that because I'm sure a lot of folks on YouTube can kind of relate. Is you put a lot of work in some of these videos and you're like really passionate about it, and then it underperforms, or what in your mind it's not as successful as you think. But then, like you said, you just put something together, kind of like a spur of the moment, and then it's a rocket ship. It's
15 seconds later, I'm just like, really? Like, I put effort into this.
Right. So 2018, when you started, had you been like me, my journey, I've been kind of lurking for a while before I was like, hey, I'm going to do this. And if so, what were some of the channels that you really enjoyed watching that you really wanted to kind of connect with, learn from, all that kind of stuff?
So at the time, I mean, I think for anyone that kind of starts out with starting a channel, Vinylize is one of the channels that everyone will probably reference. I was watching him a lot. There was also Vinyl Rewind, great guy out of California. I was watching a lot of his stuff. His analysis videos very much are like an influence for me when I do videos on in-depth topic, subject matters. There was also another guy. He went by the username Biosite1. He was a big Kiss fan. He hasn't been doing videos for some time, so I would watch him. So yeah, you're right. I was kind of lurking for, I would say, a good couple of years before I decided to kind of work up the courage and sit in front of the camera and just go at it. And so that's kind of how my pre-beginnings kind of stem from.
And did your journey to YouTube in the first place, was it, said you started collecting around 2014, if I heard that right?
Yes.
Was it more like looking for like-minded collectors, learning best practices, new information, that kind of thing? Is that what led you to YouTube, or was it just kind of like what's going on here?
Basically learning whatever I was able to learn in regards to like what turntables were good, what to use for storage, whether it's outer sleeves, inner sleeves. But of course, to get a general gist of, what people are into, because I think that's one of the distinguishable factors of the YouTube vinyl community is that while, let's say, someone like myself might do a video discussing turntables and sleeves and accessories, we all have our taste in music. So I feel like all of us can be labeled as like the blank person, like, oh yeah, that's the jazz guy, that's the Kiss guy, how ironic, and then all this and that. So that's another way that I see it. It's all subjective down to taste, and that just kind of opens your world up to whatever it is that other person is into.
Yeah, no, I can appreciate that. One thing that viewers and listeners to our conversation here may know you from is something you have kind of a unique lane, because I think it's safe to say you're kind of against the grain demographically speaking. The vinyl community by and large is, I'm going to say it so you don't have to, a lot of older white guys, right? You know what I mean? So here you are. You're the younger, a different generation. I don't even know what generation you are or any of that stuff, but a younger guy with tastes all over the place. But you're part of a group that I recently found out, I'd say probably in the last year and a half, 2 years, called the youngest members of the vinyl community. And it's folks similar in your age demographic. Tell me about how that kind of came about and the people involved and all that kind of stuff.
So it all started in 2020 when COVID happened, and it was, everyone was in quarantine, and I was chummy with a guy by the name of Mike at Retrospin Vinyl. He was doing collabs with a lot of people, Norman Maslov, Frank over at Channel 33. Like, he was contacting everybody and anybody. And him and I, we had a bit of a correspondence. He's based up north in Jersey, so Jersey guys, whatever. He had done a collab with Emma at 8 Vinyl Low, and then we all kind of grouped together, and we were like, that was the very, very first iteration of the youngest members. And then Marikan got involved, and then it became the four of us, and then all of a sudden Jenna came in the picture, and it's ultimately it's narrowed down to the four of us at this point, without Mike. But it kind of just, we were this little group, and we were rather tight, all throughout that year of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
We did our first meetup in 2021 in Nashville, and then we met up once again last year in St. Louis.
Great choice. Great choice.
Yes, of course, of course. And it's funny because, like, all of us have our own avenues of what we like, but there's always that common ground that we all can agree on. And aside from just liking the music, it's a genuine friendship. It goes
Awesome.
beyond the realm of music and vinyl collecting. And I can honestly say that, like, when I met those guys in person for the first time when we went to Nashville, it was just what I needed at that point in my life, and it just proved that I want these guys around. So I'm blessed to call them my best friends.
No, that's terrific. You've done a really great job too, because I believe the videos live on your channel, but you've documented both of these meetups, Nashville and St. Louis.
Yes.
And to your point, I mean, I didn't know a lot about the YMOTVC. I'm going to use that acronym. I have to look at it to make sure I don't mispronounce it. But when I watched the Nashville, I believe it was Melinda Murphy had referenced it in one of her videos. And I was like, okay, what is this? I'm curious. And so it led me down the rabbit hole. That's how I kind of learned about your channel. And to your point exactly, seeing when you guys first met up, like it was definitely like very genuine and honest, and you were very like I wouldn't say giddy is probably the wrong word, but it was just very sweet how you guys like were just jiving from the jump. And like you said, it was literally the first time you guys had met. So so I'm happy to hear like that was like completely authentic, because like some of these people are making like we've talked about this offline before, but the people come into your record shop, which we'll get to in a little bit, taking the pictures and stuff. Like you guys, it came across, and it sounds like it's just very authentic.
Yeah, it honestly was a beautiful thing that we hit it off right off the bat. And keep in mind too, like we had done like various other collaborations on YouTube, like via Zoom and Skype. And we've also done like Zoom calls and such. Like one of the things that we do, I feel like we've mentioned them in our videos. When Christmas rolls around, we always get each other gifts, and we always do a big Christmas Zoom call where we open up all those stuff that we get for each other. Awesome. And it's just, we maintain that connection. And plus we have a group chat that we literally, it blows up every day. So we are very much a part of each other's lives, just outside of the YouTube realm.
1 minute, 37 seconds later.
Going back to talking about the community, and that's one thing I've enjoyed, is getting to connect with people directly and literally in person, like Brandon, Mr. Hall of Fame, Billy Hurst, Matt Sands. And what I found very interesting is that, fortunate for me, a lot of these guys are local, right? So I've been able to, it's easier to travel. Whereas for your situation with the youngest members of the vinyl community, maybe I'm misreading this wrong, but you're a Jersey, PA guy, and you've had to travel to Nashville, and you've had to travel to St. Louis.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm hoping maybe the third meetup, and no spoilers or anything, but hopefully the third meetup is going to be a little bit more closer to where you reside.
I booked my flight.
Fair enough.
I used my miles, though. Use my miles.
Okay. Good deal. That's awesome. So last thing on the youngest members. So since you guys are kind of atypical in the demo per se, right? Again, I'll use it again, the older white guys. Oh, there you are. What is your impression of the vinyl community at large? Especially like, I don't know what lanes or channels or other people, or that sort of thing, but just from your perspective, being, I'm assuming under 30 and been collecting, less than 10 years, it sounds like, all those things. Like, what is your general impression of the things you've seen, the people you've encountered, etc.?
It is a unique congregation of people that, for as varied as the taste may be, despite the similarities that you might find with other people that you're close with, there is one thing that binds us all together, and that's the love of music. And that music is a universal language that a lot of people can gel with. And I think that the YouTube vinyl community is a great outlet for yourself to be amongst your own kind, basically. So I see it as just a great wide span of people that, regardless of how different the tastes are or how similar, It brings you together. And, even like for myself, like if I was to watch a channel of someone that focuses in on a genre that I'm not too familiar with, I can dig the personality enough and actually be curious enough to check it out for myself. So, it's still like a growing thing where I'm kind of growing my musical palette more by discovering more stuff. So it's always a win-win.
Sweet. So let's dig into the real minutia, the actual record collecting. So since 2014, where did the inspiration to start collecting vinyl and music come from, and how big is your collection size? Let's just kick it off there.
So my collection right now is at about 2,000 pieces.
Okay.
And ever since I was a kid, vinyl was always an interesting object that I was fixated on. And my dad, for a while, I mean, back in the day, like he was a record hound. Like he would always go to all the record stores in Philadelphia and collect bootlegs and things. And then once CDs came in, he converted, and that was it. But he still held on to a lot of his collection. So, of course, I was able to appreciate that. But it really kicked into high gear in 2014 because of Jack White and his label Third Man Records.
Okay.
And seeing how far the limits of the format can be pushed is what intrigued me, because for anyone out there that follows Third Man, they've done all kinds of weird shit with vinyl. They've done liquid-filled records. They've done records released by a helium balloon. They've done 12 inches with 7 inches inside, like
hologram stuff. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And at that same year, he released his album Lazaretto, and the vinyl pressing of that is a must own for any vinyl lover, because there's all kinds of bells and whistles. There's a record that plays, inwards, backwards. There's locked grooves on the labels. There's floating holograms, dual intros. Like, there's a lot of magic going on that record that it fascinated me. And seeing that and what it was able to, what can be done with the format is what made me want to collect it. And of course, sound quality is always great and all. There's the science when it comes to vinyl mastering. But another reason why I love it is because it makes you appreciate the art of an album as a whole.
Sure.
And that's something that I think tends to get lost every now and then. I'm the kind of guy that just loves to sit down and take in a piece of work. And that's why vinyl, for me, in that respect, is the best format that you can ask for that.
It's really interesting you said that, because I think in today's society, there's a lot of distractions, right? And I think you would think from the surface of convenience and accessibility that vinyl would kind of like not have a market, because, there's so much competition for our time and our attention span and that sort of thing. But exactly what you're saying, like vinyl it physically requires you to turn it over. It physically requires you to remove it from a sleeve, that kind of stuff. So it's it's interesting. And I think I just saw something here recently. It said vinyl outsold CDs for the first time since like 1987 or something, right? So it's just very interesting how it all has kind of organically come back around again. And it's younger people who have really kind of helped float this boat, because like you said, there's people who changed with the formats. They changed their records to CDs or changed CDs to streaming. And some people held on to their vinyl or pieces of it, like you said, your father did. But to see this kind of resurgence in the face and in spite of competition for attention, competition for time, all that stuff. I mean, to be honest, sometimes I do listen to records, but I also may like read something. You know what I mean? It just kind of depends on the music, right? But but yeah, I think the actual, like you're saying, not only the really cool stuff they're doing with vinyl, like talking about Third Man's a great example. Not just the color variants or all the little stuff that Third Man does is really cool, but the variants of obviously this is a marketing thing, but to get a different outer sleeve at Target or Indies or all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
So that's pretty wild. So one thing we kind of talked about before we started was, and you're wearing a KISS shirt, and this is one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you. Well, first of all, you want to tell the audience, big news. I think it was this week, right? You locked in. Why don't you tell the audience, probably the best part of your week?
I will be there at the last show at the Garden on December 2nd. Here's the thing. They're not labeling it the last show ever. But look, at this point, age is catching up to them. Sure. So there's going to be a lot of poignancy behind this show. I was very lucky to get a hold of a pre-sale on Monday, the Kiss Army pre-sale. And literally, I was clicking everything that was coming up, and it took me 10 minutes to get something. And I said to myself, whatever goes through is meant for me. So I could have spent 3 figures on seats, or I could have spent 2 figures. Spoiler, I have nosebleeds. I spent less than $100. So it gets me in the building.
Yeah.
So and a lot of people are going to be at this show. A lot of notable people in the Kiss, fan world, they will be there. And it's going to mean so much to just simply be present at that moment. And, just like Gene said, when he plays the last song, I will be crying like a 6-year-old girl.
That's funny. Now, again, and I've already exposed myself on our previous conversation. We did that live stream. I know some about Kiss, right? Do you think this last show, is it going to be one of those opportunities? Because I've read some interviews about it where Gene and Paul said, they're talking about maybe Ace and Peter come up, that kind of stuff. And they've kind of been like poo-pooing about it. But I mean, they have to come up for a song or two, right? Just to pay homage, to give the fan service, but also their contribution to this.
They have to. Ace, Peter, as well as Bruce Kulick, I think. He was the guitar player of the 80s going into the 90s. They have to get them involved at some capacity, whether it's come out at the very end for a big monster jam, rock and roll all night, everyone plays on stage, or at least like every living member that's still around, or like have Peter come out and sing Beth or whatever. Something has to be done.
You would hope so. You would hope so, because I mean, if you look at one example that came to mind when I was thinking about this was like Metallica's 30th they did in San Francisco. Yeah. They had the original bass player, then they had Newsted came back, so they were really big on fan service. And I would like to think that after such a storied career and really leaning in on their fans, the Kiss Army, all that kind of stuff, that you would hope that they would do something like that. But when correct me if I'm wrong, when they got inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I mean, they didn't have Ace and Peter up there, or did I hear that wrong?
So the original 4 were inducted, and they went up and did their speeches. But usually with the Hall of Fame, there's like they will perform something. They did not perform. Right,
and that's what I read. Paul had said it'd be a disservice to our guys who have been in the band the last 20 years to then just have Ace and Peter.
I personally, for myself, look, not to go off on a tangent, all the times I've seen Kiss, it's been with Tommy Fair and Eric Singer. In my opinion, they are worthy of wearing the makeup. It's the characters that live within this brand, this empire that Gene and Paul created.
Yep.
But even for myself, for someone that has look, let's face it, the original Catman and Spaceman, Ace and Peter, it would be nice to see the original 4 play something together. Just given the fact that is the roots of what this all became.
Sure.
So I would like it. If for some God knows reason it didn't happen, then you know what? I still got my money's worth.
That's fair. So along those lines, being under 30 like you are, how did you connect with Kiss, and in general, like how do you feel you connected with these legacy artists that were well before your time, some before my time? You know what I mean?
That's a good question. So with Kiss, in 2000, and it's funny we're talking about the End of the Road tour. Back when they did the farewell tour in 2000.
It's all about branding. It's all about words.
As a rewriting of history, sort of, they call it like the farewell of the original lineup, which, sure, whatever. But anyways, VH1 was the sponsor for that tour. Mm-hmm. And VH1, at the time when it was quality music entertainment, that was on all the time in my house when I was 2 years old going on 3. And they would always run Kiss segments. And it just caught my eye because out of everything else that I was subjected to, like at the time, some of the big albums that came out were Santana's Supernatural with that hit single
Rob
Smooth
Thomas,
with Rob Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
Red Hot Chili Peppers' Californication. I would see music videos of all these bands that were dominating at the time. And guys together in a band playing. That's cool. Kiss comes on TV and I'm like, whoa. Makeup, armor, platform heels, the music kicks ass. I'm like, I like that. And, it showed me the significance of giving people their money's worth, simply. And also, the music got to me because, like, there's home movie footage of me, like, bopping around singing rock and roll all night and just, loving it to death. So it just became this continuous thing. And, most people will say, they're superheroes. So I always looked up to those guys in that respect with the personas. But of course, the music was great. And then as I got a little older, seeing all the old concert films and then seeing them live finally, my love for them just grew and grew and grew to the point now where with what's going on with the End of the Road and some of the other Kiss events that have been going on, I won't go in crazy detail about it.
Sure.
It, not in a way it rekindled my love, but it made me closer to them once again. And I always say that, for as much as I've always loved the image and the music, if you look into the lyrics, the whole ideology of self-empowerment, believing in yourself, for someone who's in his mid-20s trying to navigate through the murky waters of adulthood, sometimes you need that affirmation. And that's where Kiss comes into play for me on a personal level.
No, I love hearing that. That's really cool. So along those lines, how do you find the music of today in terms of like contemporary music? Because here you read some of these bylines, rock is dead, and that sort of thing. And I don't feel it's that extreme. I understand why some people would say that, because it's not like it used to be where you just had some guys in the garage making music and taking on the world or going for chicks or whatever. There's a lot more competing interests. It's harder to break through. It's harder to break in. Record labels also don't have the patience that they used to let bands cut their teeth and put a couple albums out and hit the road and really kind of hone their craft. It's a whole different ball game. So all that said, where do you stand with new music compared to some of this legacy music they're really into?
So rock is the furthest thing from dead. There is great music out there. You just have to find it. Because in this day and age, sure, you can take a band like Greta Van Fleet, and see what I did there?
I see what you did there.
Look, I like Greta Van Fleet, but I have a few bones to pick. But anyways, sure, there's bands like that are making their prominence, and there's even the Italian band, Mainskin, that has that song Beggin' that's been really booming. There's all those bands that are kind of almost, tipping a nod to some of the older genres of the day and older artists. But even a lot of the smaller labels, one of my favorites is Riding Easy Records, kind of like a label for all stoner and doom metal type stuff. There is a lot of great bands on that label. And even with Third Man, Jack White's label, there's a lot of great artists on there. So it's out there. You just have to find it. And unfortunately, just given how the industry is kind of run, you're not going to hear it on your resident, rock
terrestrial
radio station.
Radio. Right.
That's why satellite radio sometimes is a good option, or just simply just being in the know of, music fan circles and just hearing about bands and things, which is where the YouTube vinyl community comes into play. Because if one person talks about it, it enables you to check it out for yourself, and you learn something new and fresh.
Yeah, that's a great transition back to the YouTube piece, because there's been a lot of music that I've discovered, good and bad, that I've gone down those rabbit holes and I've spent some money at record stores that in hindsight I probably, that kind of thing.
Sure.
But it's exactly for the reasons you're saying, because terrestrial radio is so commercialized, so homogenized. It's the jack format. It's top 40. The true, what K-Rock in LA used to be is not what it is now. Or even here in St. Louis, we've got KSHE, which is, I think, arguably one of the longest running rock stations in the country. But even they're different. You know what I mean? Because obviously they've been owned by 3 different conglomerates since then, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that seems to be the struggle, is how to find these artists. And conversely, how do they break through the algorithm? How do they break through? Because a lot of it, for lack of a better word, is on them to kind of make themselves known. And it's, get in a van and try to play everywhere and try to book yourself. And I think it can be pretty daunting if you're a new band or new artist.
It's very daunting given the climate that we're in right now, because right now touring is the biggest revenue stream for artists to really break it. They have to cut their teeth on the road, and that's how they build. But also, on the other hand, too, we live in this world of social media where you have things like TikTok and this and that, where a song can trend on there and that just blows up. For example, granted, this band has been around for a long time, the band Ghost. Their song Mary on a Cross trended on TikTok, and now it's now almost, I say this with all due respect, a hot topic kind of crowd. And it subjects a lot of people to it. So, there's advantages to the new practices of marketing and social media that really does build up to a band's success outside of the usual avenues of whether it's sales, touring, streams, whatever you want to call it.
No, it makes sense. So that's a good transition. So talking about new music, old music, one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on and really kind of dig deep with you is you work at a record store. The Rock Shop. Is that the name? The Rock Shop?
That is correct. Right? Yes.
Perfect. 3 locations: Jersey, Pennsylvania, all that kind of stuff. So
yes.
I would think from the outside, somebody is still getting to know you. I would think that's got to be that's a dream gig or a dream job right now at this point in your life. Is that the case, or is this something that you can see yourself doing for years, or having your own shop? Or tell me, first of all, tell me what you do there, and then tell me, in terms of being around music all the time, is it satisfying? Is it enjoyable as somebody from the outside would think, or is it kind of blend? It just depends on the day.
So I would say in terms of the experience, it's been phenomenal. I literally go to work and listen to music all day.
Perfect.
Who would hate that? So seriously, but no, it's great. I mean, and the great thing too is that, when I started, I got to meet a lot of the local clientele, the regulars, and they build up a rapport with you, and it's great. It's just great for customer interactions and things. Mm-hmm. As for, if it's something that I would love to do, it's funny. Marikan and I, in the youngest members group, we always talk about having a record store. And could I see myself doing something among like our own imprint? Maybe. I've even thought about the idea of doing a record shop like long before I actually landed the job that I have now. Just never really kind of followed through. It was just an idea. As of right now, I get a nice paycheck. It's a great gig. To be honest, retail is retail, yes, regardless if it's a record store or you're working at a bookstore. I'd like to be out of there at some point soon, given that I do, have my business degree with Berklee College of Music. So it's kind of like a stepping stone. But I will say the record store does play a little bit of success with my YouTube career. People recognize me from videos that I've done. Mm-hmm. People that are customers there are aware of my channel and what I do. So, it's a win-win on both sides, but it's been a lot of fun. I'm coming on almost 2 years there in May, and it's been fun.
So from the inside, you've seen obviously the for lack of a better word, vinyl resurgence kind of continue and grow. Kind of what we talked about before with that CDs figure since 1987. From the inside out, do you see any signs of this slowing down? Because obviously price points are going up. Supply chain issues seem like they've kind of gotten better, but there's still longer lead times, particularly unless you're like Taylor Swift or one of the big labels and you command capacities and or have your own printing operation. Sometimes lead times can be kind of a pain. So do you see from the inside this slowing down at all?
It's been a constant uprise, and it's weird because, you say it now and then you think a year later, it's like, I don't know where it's going to be. And then as you live and experience it, it's still going up. Sure. One funny thing that I think some people might kind of like not notice, but given the fact now, if you watch like most, like, let's say films or maybe commercials, there's turntables in them. That tells you something. Yeah. Vinyl is being cemented back into the public consciousness of what is the thing right now. And what is driving this market is kids. Like you mentioned, 2 words, Taylor Swift. 4 variants of the same album, they'll buy them all. Buy them all. That's right. They will do it. I've seen it firsthand.
Yeah, that's wild. So that's good news for people who are just getting into this or have been in it for a while. It's not slowing down anytime soon, because I mean, it's like anything else. I think it was last year there was word about, Universal was taking up their prices, and, like with any kind of mass market operation, if one does it, the others soon follow, and they're testing price elasticity, all that stuff. And, in fairness, I've heard a lot of collectors this year that I've talked to, we all kind of say the same thing. Like maybe we're going to kind of be more conscientious with our spend, right? You know what I mean? Quality over quantity. There's probably less risk taking. We were talking about that before, like, trying new things and that sort of thing. But now that in some instances a single LP is coming out plus $30, sometimes $40, depending on, if they'll throw in a gatefold, or, they'll try to put a little, it's kind of like a new car. They'll put a little bells and whistles to help drive that price point up. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I hope it continues, only in the sense that I firmly believe that without this resurgence, if you will, a lot of these titles that are from the back catalog and the vaults would not be seeing the light of day. And I think that benefits everybody, because if you are somehow talking about satellite radio, you discover a Garrett Sriracha, for example, only put out one album, early 1970s. The Record Store Day Committee elevates it and represses it, and now he's got a whole new audience. Like those little stories, I love hearing about because had this vinyl resurgence not really taken place, or at least to this scale, those stories would be few and far between. So it's kind of a catch-22. Yeah, I don't want to pay more for a record, and I've got some quality control issues with the industry as a whole, but at the same time, I wouldn't be getting some of this really new stuff, or I wouldn't be exposed or have the opportunity to try some of this stuff because it wouldn't be getting pressed.
I think to kind of provide a counterpoint, the resurgence, in my eyes, continues because of the interest. In regards to the price, yeah, inflation's a thing, but my thing is, if someone's willing to pay for it, and like, for example, just to give some context,
sure.
For me, where I work at, if I was to get any classic Beatles album, it costs me $23 to order, and then the profit markup, it's $34.99.
Mm-hmm.
Some people will gladly pay for it, and if labels take notice of that, then it kind of gives them the advantage power of saying, oh, we can almost charge anything, which I don't think they're necessarily saying that verbatim, but that just goes with when it comes to talking about things of value, it is worth what one is willing to pay.
No, it's very true. I mean, if you go on, and it's a bad example, but it kind of belies the point. If you go on eBay, right, there'll be a lot of people, particularly if you go to record shows or you deal in a lot of used, and a lot of people reference online prices, Discogs, etc. And I mean, I'm sure you've seen it. There's some crazy pricing out there. You're right. But at the end of the day, it's exactly what you said. It's only worth what somebody will pay for it. And if somebody's selling a $40 record at $500, it's probably not going to move. But if they're closer to 40 or 100, maybe they'll find that person. Who knows? Speaking of that, being in a record shop yourself, there's got to be some good stories. Like, what's the craziest or most expensive record that you've actually laid eyes on that's come through the shop during your time?
Oh geez. I mean, I've seen like some. I'm trying to think back. Before I started, there was talk of a massive Blue Note collection that was purchased. This was a little bit before my time. There were still some pieces there when I started. I'm really trying to think. There was,
and I say that because while you think about it, I mean, I'm sure that the Led Zeppelin 2 RLs come in, not all the time, but I'm sure that that's not super rare. Or a Beatles Butcher cover in whatever state once in a while comes through.
I have seen a Butcher cover once, not at the shop. I saw it at a record store that I went to. For an RL Led Zeppelin 2, we had one come in like not graded condition, and it was like $100. So like for our grading system, if it's not graded, it's just beat to crap, but it's not bad enough to be in the bargain bin. Like it has some noteworthy value to it.
Right.
So there was that. Even like a lot of like newer, like I will say this, for as much as vintage pressings have their value, which understandably so, a lot of like the newer bands, how there's all these variants that are limited to like 200 or 300, copies.
Yep.
We'll get these in, and they go for like $200-$300. It's crazy. It is absolutely nuts, which plays into the resurgence. If there's 5 colored copies, of whatever, they'll buy it. Plain and simple. It sucks when there's bells and whistles that are exclusive to one than other. Like the new Ghost album that came out roughly a year ago. The indie version was on purple vinyl with stickers, and then the web store was gold with a slip mat, and then Walmart had a poster, and it's just like, you guys are killing me.
It's hard to keep up. Yeah. You literally have to do like market research to figure out what are all the options. And then, I mean, I'm sure you're like me, Dylan. Like I've bought multiple copies of the same album that did I need to? No, but one had something that the other didn't have, a poster, a different cover. It's interesting how they've kind of picked our brains in the collecting world like that. But
to anyone watching, don't suffer what we go through.
Well, Brandon
doesn't end.
Talking about Brandon, he makes a good point. Like if you buy all these things, if you need to get off them, it's money on the shelf. So it's not the worst problem to have if you've got too much of something, if disaster strikes, or you need to pool your resources to get one of those grail records, if you will.
Sure.
That's awesome. All right. So appreciate the record point of view, the record shop point of view. let's just wind it down with the lightning round if you're game for it. These are just some very simple, easy questions, fun. Probably tie it back to some of the things we've already talked about. But along those lines, with your particular collecting journey, what was your favorite or most memorable find? And that can be not necessarily, but your most expensive record or the record that you like said, oh shit. And I say this because watching the last youngest members of the Vinyl Community Meetup, you guys went to a store near, I believe it was near Emma's hometown, that you saw a Kiss piece that you were just like in awe of. So I don't know if that's it, but along those lines.
To be honest, you took the words out of my mouth.
My
in
bad.
Terms of it, so just to provide just a small bit of context, so it was a vinyl pressing. It was a 2003 pressing of Kiss Symphony Alive 4. It's only gotten 2 official vinyl pressings, 2003, and then they did it in 2014 for the Kissteria box set, which is exclusive to the set. They didn't release it separately. I said to myself on that trip, I said, I want to find 2 Kiss grails. I want to find Sonic Boom and Kiss Symphony Alive 4, because those are like 2 big holes. Granted, I have unofficial Sonic Booms, but I want an official one.
Of course.
So sure enough, saw it in a glass display case, and it was I remember, I was like, oh my God, holy shit, I want that. Oh my God. Like, it was just genuine. So like, even Emma was like rolling the footage, and you just see me like that, and it was so genuine. And look, I paid $200 for that record, and it was the best $200 well spent.
I can appreciate that, and I can relate. It's gratifying. Yeah, there's no regrets, as some people would say. That's right. Awesome. So along those lines, or a similar kind of question, if I said to you, Dylan, money is no object, licensing is no object, it's just, there's no barriers to making this happen, what would be an album that you would love to see pressed to vinyl that's never had a vinyl treatment before?
Ooh, that is a good question. I am going to go niche as hell with this. And this kind of harps in with my childhood. One of my favorite book series was Lemony Snicket's Series of Unfortunate Events. Kind of gothic, steampunkish kind of vein. For all the audiobooks that came out throughout the years, they would include a song that tied in with the plot of whichever book was in the series. Altogether, there was 13. And it was Lemony Snicket himself, along with this guy named Stephen Merritt, who is a relatively well-known musician. They had a band called the Gothic Archies. And they put together all the songs from the audiobooks, and they made an album called The Tragic Treasury. And it's out on CD. I downloaded it somewhere. And I saw the opportunity when they did the Netflix, series. I'm like, that's a perfect opportunity to put that out, and they never did. So, and it's kind of like folky. It's kind of lo-fi-ish in places. It's an interesting listen. That's something that I would love to see just for pure nostalgic reasons. That's not out on vinyl at all.
No, I can appreciate that. That makes me something I was going to ask you earlier, but that's a good lead into it. You come across to me as somebody who has like this rapid fire recall, which is really impressive. Like Robert Fitham's another one. What, just the little minutia, the details, that all that kind of stuff. Where does that come from? Because Robert's had a career in radio, and when I talked to him, it started at a young age. I'm assuming it started at a young age with you, just absorbing all of this information and music appeal and music history at a young age.
And this is the God's honest truth. It just boils down to the fact that outside of music, there isn't really much interest for me. Plain and simple. I mean, literally, like, I wake up, I listen to a record in the morning when I have my coffee. I listen to Apple Music on my ride to work. I listen to music all day when I come home. Like when I'm at work, and then when I come home, I'll spin something. When it comes to the artists that I love, and you picked up on that right away, I become obsessed, which is why, I mean, and this isn't just like with Kiss or Pink Floyd or whatever, but like, I love to learn about the inner workings, because it makes me understand the context of what I'm listening to in terms of the history, what was going on at the time. It paints a full picture. I can't just listen to an album and say, yeah, that's a good album. I got to know the inner workings. So that's simply just being passionate about it. And like I said, there isn't much else. I live a very boring life. With outside of music, there isn't much here.
Hey, man.
That's where it comes from.
That's awesome. You know, one thing, and this is one of the lightning round questions, talking about music, live music in particular. I heard recently Jamie Lee Curtis had kind of come out and said, you know, and she's older. She's actually older than me, believe it or not. Listeners and viewers at home may not believe that, but she is older than me. She came out and had a really interesting idea, and it was kind of grounded in the theater world of matinees, right? Like if you go to Broadway, obviously they have the Broadway.
Yeah, I think I saw something like this.
So yeah, so she basically was reaching out and saying, you know, artists like Bruce Springsteen, Coldplay, artists that she would like to see. How about a matinee? Now you see this like at the festival circuit. There's not the big bands, but you know you could see live music during the day. But what are your thoughts of this idea? As a what I'll self-profess old, because I'm getting older. I kind of love the idea because as I'm getting older, I used to dine on live music in college.
Sure.
I'd go out all the time. Even in my 30s, go out a lot. COVID happened, slowed that down. But now there's more of a barrier for whatever reason. If it's a concert during the week and you got to get up and work in the morning, that's a drag. Or if it's a Sunday night concert. So there's a lot of reasons that in our minds, or at least my mind, to not go sometimes. But this idea really kind of tickled me because that's a great question. You know, what would stop a big artist from having a big show at, I don't know, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, whatever. So what are your thoughts on that? Because you're still in the vibrancy of life, and you can go, you need an hour and a half of sleep and you're good to go. You know what I mean? Like, what do you think about hearing this?
I was going to say, I'm thinking to myself, yeah, all the shows I've ever been to were during the evening. So, I mean, look, it has its advantages for those that have to get up the next morning. So, like, I guess it depends within circumstance. But you know what, though? Make it distinguishedly different from an evening show. Now, that's not to say that bands would do 2 shows in one day.
Sure,
back in the 70s, bands would do that all the time.
Well, and comedians do it too. I mean, unless you're like a Chappelle or Rock, and but even if they're in the right venue, like I know I saw Dave Chappelle years ago, and he was playing 2 shows. He make it worth his while he's in the town he's traveled to, that sort of thing. Music's probably a little bit different because it's a little bit more taxing physically on the vocals, etc. But
well, I'll tell you what, it's probably a profit thing from a business standpoint, because if, let's say, Dave Chappelle knows that he can do 2 shows and sell them out, he's going to damn well do them.
Yep.
And honestly, you know, with Springsteen, given some of the backlash behind the ticket prices and this and that, he can do it. Plain and simple. So it's not a bad idea, and plus it gives you time in the evening to do whatever you need to do. So, you know.
Well, Jamie Lee Curtis was speaking my love language. She's like, "Yeah, I'd love to be home and in bed by 7:30." Now that I'm not that extreme. But I could appreciate that. So, cool. All right. Last 2 lightning round questions. We're almost home. What would you say, going back to working in the record shop, what is your biggest pet peeve of working in a record shop? It could be something related to the actual work you do. It could be something the customers do. It could be when somebody comes in and thinks they've got black gold and it's a Herb Alpert whipped cream cover, and you got to break their heart and say, yeah, you're not going to get anything for that.
Yeah, you unlock something to me there. Like, there's always those guys that, and I feel like, I don't know, when it comes to people that see what's going on in the vinyl resurgence and what records go for, they tend to think that what they have is worth more.
Generational wealth, actually.
Yes. Yeah, it's like, for example, today, like someone was like, yeah, I have a Rolling Stones, Some Girls with the celebrity faces on the cover. And it's like, yeah, I mean, we kind of see those often, you know, things like that. I mean, I will say though, I mean, it's a different ball game from how it was maybe 10 years ago to now, because you can get a copy of Rumors for like $1, $2. Now you're paying 25 or 30 for a decent OG, roughly. So there's that. And if they take offense to it, it's like, look, you know, if you want what it's worth, sell it.
Free market, yeah.
Name your price. If you're trying to get it out of your hands, we'll get you fast cash, but understand it's a business. We got to make our profits. That, and then also if a section is just manhandled, show some respect to the product. My God, disorganization, all the records are for. I think, you know what? No, that's a pet peeve for any record store employee. Just to see everything just leaning out, and then just some sections just get more abused than others. So, and it's just Jesus, it creates more work for us to have to reorganize it, and it detracts everything. You know, it's can of worms.
No, I could appreciate that, because some of the record stores I follow online, Noble Records comes to mind.
Yeah.
You know, it's a crime against humanity. All the records are leaning for.
Yeah.
But even, it's funny, if I'm at a record show, it's not just exclusive to record shops. Like people at the record show will go through records and just leave, and the whole crate's about to tip over because all the weight is I mean, these people, I don't know. I think it comes to nature or nurture, and that's a whole nother conversation, I guess.
Basically, moral of the story is show some respect.
yeah. Don't be a jerk. Cool. All right. Well, Dylan, we made it to home. We're here. We're at the precipice, the end of the lightning round.
Yes.
And we kind of touched on a little bit on it before, but this is the one I kind of thought about. Since you are younger persuasion, like in 10 years, if you go on dates or whatever, like, oh, what do you see yourself doing in 5 years? What's your 5-year plan stuff? I was thinking about somebody like you who's, just so passionate about music and working in a record store now. And, like where could you, not where would you, where could you see yourself in 10 years? Is it owning a record shop? Is it working in the music industry in some capacity? Because you talked about your degree, that sort of thing.
Yes. So I will say this, and this is the beautiful thing of starting out on YouTube, is that the record spinner is an umbrella for whatever it is that I do. I do dabble a little bit in journalism. I write for a website called VW Music. Real briefly, last summer when I was in St. Louis, I was writing articles while I was in bed because there was this big, massive Kiss video dump that was going on. Whole backstory behind it. We don't have to go into crazy detail, but I was writing a bunch there, and I was also writing album reviews, conducting interviews, and obviously my column is called The Record Spinner. I won't discuss this matter too much. It didn't evolve into anything, but I was in contact with a local radio station, and I was going to have my segment be Record Spinner, Rock Block, whatever it was going to be called. And then the logistics of it just didn't really kind of get off the ground. So working in the realm of radio is another thing too. When it comes to my sponsorships, people look at me as an influencer. Now, what avenues of work that can lead into is whatever. I still see myself being involved with the vinyl format and music in general, at some capacity in the multimedia business, basically, because that's more or less what I do between film and videos, writing, and wanting to do something in the radio realm and broadcasting, which I have some ideas for a prospect that you'll see when that happens. I'm cooking up something. So, cool. But in turn, I don't know, maybe a store. Maybe have my own. It's the store aspect is one of those what ifs, because I've been doing retail for almost 10 years. I want to enjoy my holidays. Seriously.
Well, it's funny you said that, because it seems to be a common thread from the shop owners I know and the ones I've noticed from afar, that if you own the shop, it all starts and stops with you, and you got to be hitting the pavement, getting those collections, following up on those leads. And while I'm sure it's rewarding and you sure as hell build a great collection because you see the things that sometimes don't even make it to the floor, it seems like a lot of work. And that's been something, because my wife has been saying, like, why don't you open a shop? And like Billy did it and all these other people. And the reality is, for different reasons, but the reality is it's a ton of work. And I would not want my passion to be dampened and all for music as a whole.
Sure. By
making it really feel like work, because it will be work. There's no doubt about it. Now, there's the people that say that thing, if you do what you love, you don't work a day in your life. Yeah. Tell that somebody who's working 12-hour days and missing holidays, right?
See, that's a valid point right there. But do you know what keeps my love for vinyl and the whole thing itself thriving while working in a record store?
Discounts. No.
Well, that's always nice. No, do you know what it is?
No, shoot.
Going to other record stores.
Oh, okay.
Getting out of the norm. There's a number of record stores in my neck of the woods that I will gladly make the pilgrimage out to, and it makes me enjoy my job just slightly more. Plain and simple. While my job has all the advantages, I still always show my love to the other shops. And plus, sometimes, depending on demographics, some people might have stuff that they'll bring in there that I never really see at my shop. So you never know. There's always that variable.
So let's put a cherry on top of this Sunday, because you made me think of something. Talking about going to other shops. What would you say outside your normal market, and call it bi-state, tri-state? What's the coolest shop that you've seen through traveling?
Obviously, Third Man Records was one.
Okay.
There was another shop that I went to in Nashville with the youngest members. I think it was called The Groove, I believe. Forgive me if the name is wrong, but it was a record store set up inside a house. And
was it Grimey's?
No, it wasn't
No, okay.
Grimey's. We
Okay.
did go to Grimey's though.
Okay.
Grimey's was cool.
Okay.
But it was a place called, I think it was called The Groove. I might have the name wrong. I apologize. But if you watch the documentary, you'll see it. But they completely like gutted out the house and they turned it into a retail storefront. So that was cool. I'm trying to think about St. Louis. The coolest shop, Riverbend Records.
Oh, naturally.
Billy's shop was awesome. I picked up his album that he had for sale there, the Kiss Pinball Machine. I dropped some good cash there. Great selection. I'm trying to think of what vintage vinyl in St. Louis was great too.
I was just there tonight. Yeah.
Yeah. There was what was the other shop? When I was in Las Vegas, I went to Zia Records, which was great. The Rabbit Hole Records, and it's in Pennsylvania. The town is escaping. In Greensburg, Pennsylvania. It's this little like hole in the wall type place. You can go down these stairs. It's right underground. It's a really cool shop. Places like that, and that's one of the things like I love too. Like if I travel out to a new area, I will scope out the shops and just, obviously it's a video making opportunity, but also it gets me out and it makes me check out and see what's there.
Yeah, no, I'm same way. Anytime I travel for work, pleasure, whatever, I do like to map out record stores. It's not a must, but it kind of is. Only for kind of what you're talking about. It gets you to different places you probably wouldn't normally expose yourself to.
Oh,
and there's a lot, and finding cool records is awesome. But sometimes it's just getting out, because a lot of times these record stores are in very cultured, very vibrant parts of town. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're like holes in the wall, but it at least gets you to explore. And that's what I've always enjoyed. One of the things I've enjoyed the most is the journey as part of collecting.
Oh, hands down. I mean, hell, when I was in Las Vegas for my best friend's wedding, I was like, all right, I will gladly make the 10-minute drive just out to like a more suburban area to go to Zia, just to get out from Caesars and the Rio and just, see that. And even like when I was in Greensburg, I picked up a couple records by local artists that were there. So it's cool to, have it be centered around what your surroundings are. So it's like a travel log almost.
For sure. Cool. Well, Dylan, we made it. Thank you. I've really enjoyed this chat and getting to know you better.
Of course. Thank you.
Again, Dylan is over at the Record Spinner on YouTube. What was the website that you write for? You want to plug that too?
Yes. So I write for a website. It's the website is called VW Music, but I believe the URL is vwmusicrocks.com. You can find my column there. I've done plenty of Kiss content. I've reviewed albums that have come out in the past year. I've done some interviews and this and that. So that's up there. And then, obviously I'm on YouTube. I upload new content every Friday. Along with the occasional weekend, I'll drop an unboxing or a guitar vocal cover, since I am also a musician. So there's always surprise dropping. So keep your eyes peeled.
Awesome, man. Well, again, thanks for the time, and hopefully we'll catch you again on the Concert Buddy / Vinyl Community Podcast / wherever you see or hear this, man. Enjoy the time. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Well. How the turntables...
Well, we out of time.